It's not feeling great, so I'm going to be doing the speaking today, just so that's on the record. And I call this meeting to order. Hello, hello. Okay, so let's do a roll call. Evan.
Present.
Joe Kosciuszko.
Present.
John Custer.
Here.
Beth Dongisha is here. Anthony DiVincenzo. And
Present.
Joe Falcon.
Here.
Note, Mark is out. Mark Carr is out. Okay, let's do a moment of silence, please. And if you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, 4.1 is consider approving the agenda. Okay, Evan moved and
Second.
Joe seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Nope. So motion passed, agenda is approved. Do we have public comments for the agenda today? Okay. And 6.1 is considering the minutes from our February 6th meeting.
Move to approve.
Evan moved to approve. Anyone second?
Second.
Second by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No, none opposed? None opposed. Okay, so minutes have been approved for February. New business, updates, discussion, and possible action on E-Bike Subcommittee. Questions sent to Township need Township updates.
Yeah, I'm just keeping that on there. I'm gonna say, I think I'm supposed to. Going to keep it on there per requirement for now.
Yeah, what I can tell you is we did do the training. They didn't go specifically into surveys yet, but they did tell me that we can do surveys. I'm going to send the survey over to her, the gal who did the training with us, and see if she can go ahead and put it together. The concern that I have is that it's the number of people that it'll go to the way it's set up right now. And so it would only go to those who have given us their email addresses. And that's a very small number that's actually given us the email address. We have more people who respond to our newsletter and who go out and pull the newsletter in than we obviously do to people who have actually given us the email addresses. I think the number of email addresses we have is, like 300 or something like that. So it's a very small number when we look at the total population of the town. So what we talked with her about was potentially doing like a release and maybe tying it into the time that we're going to do a release of the newsletter, and then we would do a social media blitz at the same time. And so if this committee's okay with that, we'll start putting the survey together, get it ready, but then maybe this committee could write a couple releases. One that would be a news release when the newsletter goes out next time, and then two, some social media kind of releases that we would want to go with that, with the idea that, and then we would do QR codes to the survey. And so that would be the way to get the most. If we just do the survey and it just goes to the number of people that we have, even if we got a really good response, which would be, 15, 20%, you have a very small, because we have such a small group that we actually have emails for, we would have such a small base to use that I would like to see us figure out how to get more. And so that was the conversation that we had. We think that's the best way to get the largest number. So if you guys are okay with that, I'll move forward with that idea. If you have other ideas, I'm open.
Is there a minimum legal threshold to help when you're doing things that could change policy, where you kind of have to have like at least like some precedent where you'd like to get certain percentages?
There's no minimum. I mean, I think if we're gonna make major policy changes, we need something bigger. I don't know that I would say e-bike is a major
Yeah.
policy change. I just think when you're sending out a survey, if you say, I sent out a survey to 300 people in a town of 15,000,
Yeah.
that's not representative. And so I think the key would be that we say, yes, we did send it to those 300 folks delivered, but we also put it in our e-news, which I think goes to, is it like 2,000 folks, 3,000 folks, something like that? Yeah, I think it's up to that number. So it's a pretty high exposure rate. And we've just, if you received your tax bill recently, hopefully you saw inside the tax bill, we were encouraging people to go and register to get the newsletter, or the newsletter. And also, then we would do the, social media. And if we did both of those, I think we would drive a pretty good sized group, and we would target the social media to folks within Newtown as best. You can't do it 100%, but she can target the area that we hit. And so I would target that area.
Is there a question on the survey to make sure that ask where they live? That way we can.
I'd have to go back and
discount
look.
responses that are not from.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go back and look at it. The problem is if I say, are you a resident of Newtown? People who live in, Radnor, Marple, and Edgemont that have Newtown Square addresses all say they're residents of Newtown because they assume they have a Newtown Square address. So that's there. So the real way, if we want to make sure we do that, would ask for the address. The problem with that on a survey sometimes is it reduces the number of surveys you get back. We could do it, what street do you live on? Without making it be as specific. But the committee's concerned about that. Those are some of the things you can do to help address those issues.
Does the township have any restrictions in asking for PII, like personal identifying information or anything like that?
I don't want to, I wouldn't want to ask for anything that we keep.
Yeah.
Right? I'm really careful. Like we try to keep very little information that's not public.
Yeah.
On anything that's one of our servers for lots of reasons, for
But I mean, like,
exposure.
for us, like, we're not even supposed to keep people's names.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge with that is if as a owner of a piece of property in town, your name is on the county website, so I'm not so worried about names. We don't keep any like credit card information or anything like that on township servers. We have a lot of protections in place, but we really limit those kind of things. And so we don't even keep Social Security numbers from employees on township servers. We have all that
But
in a
there's been no
separate.
problems, like
in a
asking for a
separate-
street address or
Yeah.
a residency or
Yeah,
anything like that.
so,
for you guys.
yeah, most of those are public information kind of. And I understand that federal government has other restrictions,
Yeah, yeah.
or I guess with the Park Service, your state government, and that, state or your federal? Federal, yeah. So anyway, those are things that we would look at, but if we brought it back in, we would try to use it as maybe how it's submitted, not as an identifier. And if we could figure that out.
You asked us a question though, so do we all agree that it makes sense to get it out to the largest number of people possible, in which they would include the QR codes and also the QR codes in the newsletter and the social media posts along with it, right? Does anybody agree, disagree?
Agree.
Yeah,
Agreed.
more people, the better.
I think that's the way to get it.
Yeah,
I think it's the way to get the most out. If somebody from this group who's your bicycling group, wants to put basically what they would like it to say, what you're trying to get people to do.
meaning like the tagline, the
Well-
one-liner.
No, for
Social
the,
media post or
for
whatever,
the,
magazine.
for the newsletter
Yeah.
post, like, give us that, like, we'll get the QR code and do all of those pieces. If I could get somebody from this group to say, the reason why we're doing the survey is X. Here's what we're looking for and what we're hoping to get from it. And that way people know what they're kind of answering the survey for.
When would you need that by?
You recall when the next release is? It's newsletter, yeah, I'm thinking we'll hit the April one is the one I would aim for, but I think it's like April 8th. Is that when everything has to be in?
Sounds right.
I think it's April 8th is what I would aim for.
Are we thinking we just need like a paragraph? That's it.
Yeah, just whatever you know you want to do, you know what you're trying to get, right? You're doing the survey because you're trying to look at e-bikes and what would be the guidelines we would want in the township. And so I would talk about it from a trails and greenways perspective, what you do, just a short, I might have a short 2 sentences about why you exist as a committee, what you're trying to do. And then the next piece would be, you know, we realize e-bikes are becoming more popular. People are using them on trails. We want to do a survey as to what kind of guidelines that you think would be wise to have within the township related to e-bikes and how they're used.
When does the newsletter for April go to print?
I think we have to have everything into them by the 8th, and I think that it goes within a week after that, is how it works.
8th of April,
The week after the 8th.
of
It
April
would
or
be-
March? Do I need in 2 days or a month and 2 days?
I'm saying we
April
would
8th.
aim, oh, I see. I'm saying we would have everything in by the 8th of April
That's,
for the April news release, because I don't think we could turn everything around.
I didn't know if you meant the 8th of March, which is in 2 days.
No, I'm sorry. I was meaning 8th of April for April's newsletter.
Good.
It's roughly a week after we give everything over to them.
All right, so ball and court, the committee will get that over to the township to accompany the questionnaire.
Can we include like an image of an e-bike to kind of catch people's eyes?
We're gonna get one with Joe and his e-bike pulling a
There
wheel.
we go.
Yeah.
2 pictures of you on a wheelie and 2 e-bikes. So you're saying we gotta get on one with you
The
guys.
custom builds, right?
Okay, sounds good, sir. The ball and court's us and we'll get it back over to you.
So I'm gonna take the survey, send it over to her, let her start putting it together in the thing. And then we'll go from there.
Got
okay.
it, thank you.
Okay, anything else on e-bikes or can we move on to the next one? Trail walks. Okay, let's
think
move
we're
on to trail walks. Last time we did the one at Ridley Creek State Park. Evan, you were part of that. All good?
Yes, we had about a dozen or so people. It was a cold day, but sunny. It's nice, a good group. Everyone had a good time.
How many people we have roughly?
Dozen or so, yeah,
Nice.
maybe a couple more, yeah.
Nice.
Nice. Thank you for
It was good turnout
Evan,
for the winter.
that one. The couple proposed ones coming up would be Papermill Walk with the Historical Society on March 15th at 1:30. Anyone available to help with that one? March
March
15th,
15th. What, next Saturday?
That's next Saturday.
yeah. And I think Terry said she was able to do that one, though I think the ones that have dates are ones that Terry are able to do.
I
but-
should be available.
Okay, cool. We threw around the idea of Drexel Lodge Park in April. Anyone available in April and willing to possibly lead a walk in April?
Depends on the day and time.
Well, you get to pick it.
Yeah, all right.
This is March, so our next meeting will be April, so I mean, we
Yeah.
could wait till the next meeting to pick a date, but if you had, if anyone had a date that they are available and they want to move forward with that, we can get it on the schedule, make it happen.
So, hold on, going back to Papermill Walk, should I get in touch with Terry to post that, or should I post that?
Because she has details from the Historical
Oh,
Society, it might be
right,
good
okay.
to talk to her about it.
Okay.
and Just make sure all the ducks are in a row.
Yep.
Okay, so nobody's feeling April date right now.
I definitely cannot.
I'll try, it just depends on children's activity schedules.
Okay, and I know all the spring sports are starting, so you probably don't have
I
to
don't,
schedule it.
exactly.
Yeah, okay, we'll touch back on that at the April 3rd meeting then. And then Garrett Williamson Bird Migration Day Walk on May 10th. That's at 8:30 a.m. I think Terry is involved in that one. Anyone else? You're down for that one?
I can be.
Okay, so we got a couple people that can help out with that.
Yeah, that's also a good bang for the buck event because of the sheer number of people that show up. So for bang for the buck and getting our message out, it's very helpful.
Yeah. I may be able to help that day, but I won't be, probably won't be able to talk because I will be getting over throat surgery.
Ooh.
But I can walk, so I can be a sweep or something like that if need be. Okay, any other thoughts on walks or anything? Or are we good for a while?
Good for-
Okay, cool. 7.3 is update discussion and possible action on trail signage quotes. So I guess that's me and Evan. I had printed out the quote and then left it on my printer, so that's super awesome.
I can
Basic-
pull it up, yeah.
I brought it up on my phone too. So basically, oh, and Terry just said she will post the March walk. She just texted. She's watching.
Oh,
Hey, Terry.
Thank you, Tyler.
Like,
So basically the quote came back, from the gentleman that Evan knows. We were talking about creating like a trail map to be used in the meadows and then the wayside signage, so the interpretive, the informational signage. He basically, gave us a quote for that, and then for the creative, the info signage, interpretive signage, between all of that, with the signs that we were proposing, he said $1,700 plus artwork fees. And basically he was going to be looking for artwork that's already available online. So not necessarily creating new custom drawings. So it's trying to source what's out there. So we would have to pay $1,700 plus the fees for anything that may be copyrighted online. I went to another person, he was kind of interested, but then fell off. I have one more person I could potentially talk to. This may be a thing. I don't know that the township has money allocated for this, or if it's something that we need to look at grants for or what, but at least we have a quote to give us a starting point. And this would be in addition to the costs of the actual signs themselves.
which I forget, didn't we already have quotes on that originally?
Yeah, it was around $1,000 a sign
so-
for the wayside, kind of the 2-foot panel type things, and then smaller signage for like maps would be a different price.
Okay.
Okay, so are we thinking?
George is giving me the heads up that we do have some money in there for that. I don't know how much we have, that we'll have to look at what, like, we may be limited what we can do this year
Yeah.
to get the process started, but then we
I
can
mean,
just add.
Well, the
to it.
nice thing is we get the design going. In theory, we like it. We just can
Use it.
replicate and use the same thing, make minor changes to different trail locations
Yeah.
maybe. So it's a pretty standard thing and then plug it.
Well, I think he was looking at a trail map for the meadows specifically,
Oh,
like that,
okay.
and then
It's not just the signage then too.
well, then you had the informational signage that would
Okay.
be additional. All of that together came up to about $1,700, and it would be print ready. So
Right.
it'd just be, here's the file, go and do it. So as we have money, then we could be like, okay, this year we're printing these 2 signs, and next year we're printing these 2 signs, and kind
Yeah.
of do it that way. So at least we have the file and it looks cohesive, which,
Did he talk about, are there any design fees that can be kind of built upon for the future for other stuff? Like if you've got like basic formatting and kind of titling and accoutrement that it's just you're dropping in the new sign image, the actual trail image and all that.
we didn't really talk about that. It was more like,
The
creating-
signs were pretty specific to, I
The
understand,
location.
but the
Yeah.
formatting, I
Yeah.
think could be reused, just
Yeah.
with different information.
Yeah. but if we get.
We
kind
just
of
want to
the
make sure we have a
style-
cohesive style throughout. I was more
Yeah.
concerned about the style of like, once we get on something, it's like, okay, great. It should be fairly expandable and modular for the other locations then. And then if we could set like some, like you said, some pretty low hanging fruit goals where each year we're able to print a sign for the pre-existing township locations, and that would be great. It's just each year we're always kind of tacking onto that and the design stays the same. But yeah, that would be nice.
And he did say this was kind of a preliminary quote. He could give us something more formal if we wanted to move forward with the
Sure.
process. So that's kind of what we got for that.
Great. Thank you.
Did you have anything to add to that, Evan?
No, I think.
Okay, cool
Covers
beans.
it.
So 7.4, updates, discussion, and possible action on zoning subcommittee comments, and potential recommendation to Board of Supervisors. And I know zoning changes got sent out to the crew. There wasn't a whole lot of chatter that I saw. Back
Yeah, I
and forth.
didn't, I sent it out. I didn't have a whole lot back. Obviously, I know I had talked with you and Joe previously, so you kind of already explained some of it. I know Beth, you said you had a couple of questions that might be pertinent before we would actually put it to a vote. It's possible we could still vote on it today, but definitely hear
Do
you
you want
out.
to start with your questions? Do you want me to summarize? How do you want to proceed?
I'd like a summary first. I think
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
we
Maybe
have a
that will
member of the
answer my
public here,
Yeah.
which, you know, we don't always have, so I think it would be helpful.
Sure. All right, so last year, Joe and I met to discuss some zoning code recommendations, zoning code change recommendations. In the light of this committee's mission, which is to improve, part of its mission is to improve, walking and alternative
Accessibility.
transportation throughout the township, right? So looking at the zoning code and trying to see what changes we could make to possibly improve that through changes to the zoning code. So the first one, they're not in any particular order here, but the first one here is in the C1 district. And Timothy, if you can pull up the zoning code map. So the C1 district is kind of the that red district in the middle of town there, kind of the old St. Albans Circle area, and I think it's the shopping center across the street as well. So in the C1 district, which is currently zoned for commercial use, our first recommended change is to eliminate the parking, the off-street parking requirements. Either eliminate them completely, which would be my preference, or what we wrote here instead in our recommendation is that the minimum number of parking spaces should be determined by the developer. So basically, if you're trying to open up a store and you think you need 20 spaces, go ahead, put in 20 spaces. If you think you need 0 spaces, because you're going to do all foot traffic, then put in 0 spaces. Obviously, this will all be subject to approval by the township, but we want to take out the mandated minimum of you must have X amount of spots per square feet or whatever for this district. Moving on to our second and we can discuss more of these in detail, just gonna give a brief summary of each one. So our second detail is same in the C1 district. Right now, it's only zoned for commercial uses. And our recommendation here is to allow mixed use in that zoning district. So I copied the language directly out of Media Boroughs zoning code. I thought they had good language there. So it allows paragraphs A through O are the allowed uses, and it lists a bunch of different commercial uses. And we're proposing adding paragraph P, which would be mixed use where offices and or residential are located above retail establishments or residential use above offices. And I didn't make up the language. I copied it directly from Media.
What district was that again?
Same one, C1.
C1, same one.
The core,
Okay.
the center of town.
Thank you. Sorry, trying to keep up with the notes. I'm not as fast.
Yeah,
as you
sorry.
are. I know it's all documented.
It's all,
online,
yes.
but just, you know.
All right. The third one here is,
Just real quick, as
Yeah.
I'm thinking about what you just said, are you we talk about reducing parking, but you're talking about also maybe creating residential in the area. Does
Right.
does the parking then still tie to the residential or?
the recommendations stand on their own, but if we go, as we go through them, there's actually another recommendation, as we go down here, I think it's number 5, that talks more about parking. And in that one, we're proposing similar reduction of parking minimums. I don't know if reduction is the right word, but easing of parking minimums. However, in that one, we specifically exclude changes to residential parking
Gotcha.
minimums.
Okay.
So that kind of ties together with
Okay.
that. Even though the
Okay.
recommendations are intended to stand alone, if they were all adopted, they would kind of tie together in that way.
Okay. That's fine.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure.
Make sure there's not a different conflict.
Has the center of town been rezoned C1? It used to be special use.
It is C1 per the current zoning
It
map.
is now? Okay.
Yes, sir. The third one is in the C1 and C2 districts. Again, these are still the commercial districts. So Joe and I discussed that the large front yard setbacks. We thought, make it difficult for any, anyone to access the site not in a car. So if you're coming up, on foot or, off the bus or on a bike, whatever, you're driving through, so you're walking through or getting through a parking lot, possibly a huge parking lot, if you, see in our commercial developments. So we wanted to, for future development, we'd like to see reduced front setbacks. You can see what we've recommended here. There's, right now, on Westchester Pike, the minimum setback for, like an office building is 125 feet. We'd like to see that reduced to less than 40 feet for future development. We want the buildings up close to the street, with the parking in the back.
So it's funny you say that. So after you had sent this go around through a while back, I was talking with my uncle who lives out west, and there's a lot of communities that are changing that motto because of the over commercialized look of like driving down a major thoroughfare, shopping mall, where you can't even get to the business. It's like you said, like it's all parking. And it kind of has like, it's almost like an eyesore. Like the buildings can be ornate, and especially when there's good zoning requirements and ordinances on like how they have to be upkeep and all that kind of stuff. And, but then you don't have like that vibe. And then the other thing is that all the businesses, you're just like staring at the cars if they do have outdoor space and outdoor seating versus like courtyards and stuff like that. So I've seen similar stuff, but like, I don't know if it's catching on in the Northeast. But it was just something that I had noticed out west, just from talking with my uncle about similar development stuff.
So I'm gonna be playing devil's advocate just for purposes of
Please.
explanation wise.
Sure.
I mean, we've had a lot of development occur at this point. I don't know how much more development that would be applicable to. So the concern is what's the effort at this point to rezone when it's just not.
Well,
It's
it
not
would be the
rezoning.
future, because it would be the redevelopment in the far future. So when
I
some of these other places get torn down and rebuilt, there would be a benefit. Maybe it's 30 years from now, but. it-
Yeah,
you know,
so if you think about zoning, typically zoning is what you want your community to look like in the future, not necessarily what it is today. And so typically I recommend that zoning be written in such a way of what you want 50 years from now, because it takes that long to have the changeover for it to get there.
I
Joe,
understand that. So here's my concern.
Please.
okay? I think there's gonna be a lot of time and effort to go into this. And the question I have is, you can change the zoning laws, but at the end of the day, you can ask for a variance. And a company that comes in that wants to build is gonna say, hey, we're not in a situation where we can limit the number of vehicles. I mean, we don't have all that much in the way of public transportation. Maybe more so in Delaware County than Chester County, but
If you listen carefully, at no point did we propose eliminating, I'm sorry, mandating that you cannot have parking.
yeah,
We said, we'll leave it up to you.
yeah.
It's a reduction of regulation. It's not saying you're not allowed to have parking on site. It's saying, it's up to you. You want to build what parking you think is appropriate.
No, and I appreciate that, and I agree with where you're going with it. I just want to make sure that we appreciate the battle that may occur. And if that's a mountain that we want to die on. that's
Yeah,
all.
and then to your point about that it takes a lot of time for this to come, I think definitely for like the reduced setbacks, I mean, that's not gonna come into play until someone does a major reconstruction, and that, obviously, that's a long term. But the 1 and 2 with the parking minimums in C1 and the mixed use zoning in C1, the C1 district on the St. Albans Circle area, that area to me looks completely stagnant. And I think a big part of that is the buildings that exist there now could not legally be built today because of our zoning regulations. And people are hanging on to
Aging infrastructure.
aging building stock for residential because it can't be built there now, and there's a demand for it, so it stays as is. And none of the office and other uses there get revitalized because if you tried to build those buildings now, even the parking lots they have are inadequate to meet our current parking requirements. So no one invests in that area because they legally can't do it.
So my point is, it's a leading question because I just
Yeah.
want to advance what those questions are going to be from the public, or
Yeah.
in particular, the zoning committee or whoever has to.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we flush that out.
Absolutely.
Well, part of the process of getting it to the Board of Supervisors as a recommendation is we're gonna get a lot of questions probably just internally from the township level first, before it even gets to a position of where the public gets involved. And then that's the whole reason for the public notice period, in which we're gonna get like you said, it's gonna probably generate a lot. But there could be good from that, because maybe we just have an honest aha moment, like, that was a great point. We don't want to, obviously, the intent is to, when you're talking about any zoning or law changes, it's like, you want to have the least overall negative impact with still getting at the goal of it. And sometimes it's hard to see that from our view, because we have a very narrow view of trails and greenways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's part of the process to, we have to vet it, but part of that vetting is by getting the public involved, which won't happen until we get it to the Board of Supervisors. Really.
Yeah, and no, Joe, I appreciate you bringing up those questions. I do think that, I don't think that we're gonna get a lot of pushback from developers in reducing parking requirements, for example. I think they'll be pleased to see
I
that.
mean,
That's,
Could be worse.
but it could be,
but you're not getting money for square footage by parking space.
exactly.
But there are also requirements for having disabled. That we're still gonna have that.
Absolutely. And we actually did address that in number 5 here. Yeah.
Well,
We'll get to that in a second. So,
We just went through 3. Let's
yeah,
go. to 4.
let's hit 4. 4 is a brief
Before we
one.
Move forward
Alright,
on the
please.
parking stuff. I do have a question or comment. I like the idea, like St. Albans Circle. Yes, there is shared parking, but like there's parking on this property and there's parking on this property. And now this property is like, oh, my people will park over here and use this infrastructure, and they don't have any responsibility to make sure that this other property's infrastructure that is being used is being upkept. So I could see that being like, somebody come in like, oh, I don't want to put in the money for that. They'll just have them use, Joe Schmo's parking lot down the street. How does that become fair for other business owners in the area? I understand where you're getting at, and I like the idea of like, we don't need everything paved, but there is the fairness for other businesses. And then also, if the number of parking spots are reduced in any way, then do they start parking in the street in the neighborhood? And now you have all the cars that would normally be in a parking lot now parked in a residential area. So that would be my big concern with changing it. I like the general idea. It's just, I worry about some of the
Well, and
application, the
Yeah.
practical application of it.
I would imagine in this vision, as Steve has told us repeatedly, and again today, is like, it's the vision for the future and
Yeah.
way in the future. And the hope is by that point, we have the infrastructure for more pedestrian usage. And there might be a complete change of how the township looks as some of those aging buildings and things change, but they can't change without some of these changes.
I'll give you an example. In Ardmore was a lot less urban, not that it's urban, it's still suburban, but it was a lot less urban 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago.
A lot less dense.
Yeah, and they took a surface parking lot. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And yeah.
When I first moved.
Yeah, okay.
And
Good.
it's amazing. I mean, but they still have a parking lot.
They do, that's what I'm saying. They took a surface lot, put public parking, put apartments above it. Like, I could see, like, again, this is just, who knows what's gonna happen in the future, but if the St. Albans commercial area becomes more pedestrianized in the future, I could see maybe it starts out with a surface lot somewhere that's convenient for everyone. You park here, then you walk around St. Albans and shop and eat and whatever. And then maybe if the area continues to develop and there's more demand, maybe that surface lot becomes a garage, 2-3-story garage. And, that's your parking solution. So people aren't in the neighborhood and whatever, there's somewhere for them to park, and then, but that's down the line.
Did the second phase or the first single phase for Ellis Preserve, did they, I don't know if they promoted them. Was that part of any of the designs that they brought to the township?
Garage.
Instead of having surface lots like they have, that they would have more retail space and then have like a single garage?
Well, they do have the garage attached to the office building.
Right,
And- and
is that free for anybody though?
Yeah.
I didn't
That-
know that.
Yeah,
The
it
purpose
is.
of that garage
Yeah.
was they saw that during the day, it would be used by the office building, and in the evening, it would be used
Yep.
by those who were doing the event, using the restaurants and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
didn't know.
Yeah, the tap house.
One of the
oh,
things that we've done, and there's ways to get around this, and I think in fairness to the group that's done the work, I think that what they brought back are ideals, and you try to get to where you want to be in the process. And so we probably can't make it all happen tomorrow, so you probably have it phased in over time. And so, but one of the things that I would mention to you is that, like, we've been pushing back as a township saying to developers, yes, our code says this, you need X number of spaces. What we're asking you to do is not build 110 spaces, build 100 spaces, leave 10, and I'm making this number up, but leave a percentage of them not built, but make the commitment that if in the future those spaces are needed, then you would put those in. And we have found that's worked pretty effectively. We did it in, I think, 2 locations on Alice Preserve, and we've done it, I think, in 1 other place already. And the whole idea, again, is don't overbuild if we don't need to. And, one of those areas they've taken and make it a dog park for now. And we're okay with that, with the understanding that if it needs to go to parking, they'll have to do that. But so there's some ways to do that. There's some ways to write the code to allow us to kind of do that. But if the need is greater, we find out that all the people that are going here are parking, in somebody else's lot, and now they don't have enough spaces, then we make them go ahead and put their spots in.
It could go the other way too. Because you could have businesses that build vertical that want more parking. So if you think about like certain areas where they're not really department stores, but they're kind of new department stores. Has anyone seen any of the vertical Targets and stuff like that, where they just keep building levels and they go really high, and then they want more parking, and so they're actually like taking up less space this way because it's easier for them to build that at not the same design load as a parking garage, which is very costly to keep going up per floor versus warehouse spacing for just general like retail. And then, so they offset that cost, and that is a possibility, is an unintended consequence of it is that you might end up getting that. But like you said, there.
Control that by how high you allow your
Yes.
building heights to be.
Yeah,
You can control that.
Yeah,
What is the gated parking lot behind Rite Aid? That's right beside Rite Aid. What is that? Who owns that?
The person who owns the Rite Aid store owns that lot. But the two are not, I don't know that the lot was required for the Rite Aid. In other words, the Rite Aid, I think, parks the cars it needs to on its own.
They do.
They had, I think, and this was done before I came. So what I'm saying is what my understanding, somebody told me, was basically they wanted to do something else with that parking. The township said, you can't just take it away. But it's not required for the space that Rite Aid has. That's
But
what
every
you're-
now and then I see it's actually blocked. It's gated. Somebody swings the gate and locks it. And I'm
And
just
it's
like,
because it's a private,
right,
and so they're able to do that. I think it was asked that they have it there for that area.
the event, it's usually open for the events in the circle.
Well, but it was even just for like the stores, when all of those places are in use around the circle, and all of those places, bless you, are in use, when all of those storefronts are full, even the ones that kind of go off on the two sides, parking gets tight
right.
in that area, and people do park in that lot. They've tried some other things there. But we've kind of, it can't be a storage lot for car dealerships or things like that. And we've had several that have tried to do that.
Before you move on to the next point, I did have a question about the minimum setbacks that were being proposed to. You were saying 10 feet minimum. You do 10 feet, you might be able to get a sidewalk in front of a business, right? But you're not gonna have any shade trees or anything like that because you just don't have space for it to grow. So I guess
Yeah, we can do more.
what's the priority, you know, like I get like having it more upfront, so it seems a little bit more accessible and stuff like that, but also.
I don't recall how we settled on 10 feet, but if
Okay.
there's a good reason to recommend something else, well,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I mean, that may be something to talk to like the Shade Tree Commission about to see if they have a distance that they
Okay.
would recommend. So, because, you know, having a shaded
Right.
sidewalk would make it even nicer to then walk through rather than something that's
Right.
blasting off the roadway and all the heat. So I'm
Hot
thinking, you know,
concrete.
Yeah.
help keep that heat island down a little bit, as well as promote the green space and still get what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's good suggestion.
No, that's a good one.
And I.
Kind of mad I didn't think of it either.
I think we have to wait till we get to number 10 for comment from the group. Am I wrong with that, or is it okay
Well-
now?
What I would suggest is allow your
Finish.
folks
Yeah.
to finish, but you could allow them, you could take public comment on this item
Perfect.
and then take public comment again, if that's okay. You know, I think that's the best way to do it versus,
Yeah.
you know, get through your items.
Okay.
And then take public comment on it, and then you can move on.
Perfect. All right, I'll hit 4 and 5 real quick. 4 is, this is something that Joe found from Edgemont Township that we liked. It was to limit curb cuts and encourage shared access to parking. Again, this would be for the commercial retail office districts. So like where you have a large parking lot in the back, maybe if a shared easement where you can all get to it and then you each have your own, you know, parking areas. The reason behind this is if you have a street that's all curb cuts, it's more dangerous for pedestrians. So again, this is more long-term vision, not an immediate change.
Well, and it's really very similar to the Casey Shopping Center. You know, we've been reducing curb cuts
Yes.
there.
Yeah, we saw
Yeah,
that.
we-
Yeah.
And the
like that.
idea is to, again, that exact issue, you know, they all own individually, I say they all do it. There's some that are together, but you know, there's a lot of individual units
Right.
in that shopping center that are owned individually, and they have parking in front of their stores, but it's shared parking. You
That's
know,
a
doing.
perfect example.
Yep.
of what we prefer to see versus.
And I think what you're saying, what you'd really like to see is
yeah,
move it to the back,
Yeah,
do that same thing, do
yeah.
it from the back, and in the front, you have the building pushed closer to
and
the
then you
front,
have, you know,
and you have walkway and
Yeah,
potentially,
even
you know, if
dining
you're
areas
encouraging
and-
biking, maybe
Yeah.
there's a bike lane that's out
Right.
front and those kind of
yeah,
things.
and there's, you know, there's
Yep.
out front dining and that kind of stuff, which
Yep.
would be lovely.
Yep.
All right, and then number 5 is, so, again, Joe found a section in the code that we liked that was specific to one of the, here 5, it was specific to one of the, it was the new, like leisure multi-use development, yeah. And there was some good language in there we'd like to see applied to more of the commercial districts. Number of parking spaces shall be determined by an analysis. So this is not for like smaller, this is for like a larger development. This is where they would have a transportation professional involved and they would make an analysis. This is language directly out of our code. We want to apply it to more sections. That's all that is. And number 6 is just, there's no change proposed, but we wanted to make it very clear. We're not proposing any changes to anything in the residential. This is R1, but really we're not proposing any change. That's our
So-
report.
Let me ask you this, because, you know, I mean, I understand what you're saying. The township has taken the position, even in R1, that we are encouraging sidewalks. Our code is not overly specific in that. I wonder if we, from a trails and a connection standpoint, would this committee not consider recommending that be in any of our residential districts? If it's a new residential is being built, that sidewalks become, and I'm not talking about a single lot having a house put on it that's in an already developed area, but, you know, one of the things that I suspect is going to happen, and we're starting to see this, some of the older neighborhoods are people are buying 2 lots and now putting a much bigger house on it they're reverse subdividing, building a bigger house on it. And now we are, what's the connection point? How that a little bit of that walking of the neighborhood seems to be going away with some of that. And so how do we keep that and how do we make those? It's just something I want to have you think about is that, does this group as a group that wants to push connectivity of walkway and biking, do you want to say that that should be a priority even in the residential district?
I don't think that sidewalks specifically are even addressed in the zoning code. I don't think it gets down to that level of detail. I don't think that I want to cross that. I don't think I want to take that on part of a proposed zoning change
Now or just in general?
now. I don't know what I'm gonna want tomorrow. I mean.
Meaning is
I
a
can only answer for
philosophical
today.
reason you do
Yeah.
not want to, like a principal reason, or just because you're not prepared to discuss it.
I haven't thought through the implications of trying to make that a zoning code requirement.
You could probably find inspiration from other townships like you did for some of the other ones, maybe. All right, so why don't we just say that this one in particular, then we should at least put it on the future agendas of the subcommittee,
Yeah.
because definitely, you're right, it's definitely on brand for what this committee's about.
Sure.
A lot of what the township and a lot of what we hear, the public, when we go to trail walks and things that they're harping about are really not in the residential communities. It's more as you get towards the main thoroughfares in the commercial district, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking there. Obviously, we want sidewalks, and we want trails, and we want connectivity by walking.
I think, I mean, just to give you an example, if you go down Goshen Road and, if we were to take the trail out, that's the Goshen Road Trail, I don't think anybody would walk down Goshen Road. I mean, it's
No
not a
sane
road.
person would
No,
Yeah, I mean,
risk
there's,
their life to do that.
exactly. It's kind of like walking down 252 where there's no sidewalk, on the southern section of 252 south of 3.
Which is why the trail is so nice there.
That's my point. And so as we look at it, and look, the township has said it doesn't always have to be sidewalk. It can be trail. And so we're pushing for those kind of things in land development. But that's something I guess from my point, what I was saying, as this group, that's the kind of zoning stuff that I think, even in the residential area is going to make a bigger impact, because if you didn't, because, that section of Goshen is all residential, but if it didn't have that, it would be a very dangerous place to walk.
Yeah.
And had we done it had we been pushing for that, years before and said you had to put it in when they put in the Springhouse subdivision, we would have almost been connected down to the bridge. And, George and I talk about all the time about how do we connect all of our properties in town that somebody could walk from one park to another park to another park. And it's going to take those kind of things to make it happen. And that's the reason why we
Agreed,
bring
yeah.
it up.
No, we can be happy to look into that.
All right, so we want to now, we've gotten through the list. We're going to take public comment now, sir. If you would come up to the podium, please.
Yeah,
And we ask that you give your name and address.
yeah, that way you can be on camera too, so everybody at home can see you.
Lovely. I didn't, you're on Zoom.
Yeah.
Will Browers, I'm on Clearbrook Road. And I always wondered why our development was built in 80-ish, didn't have any sidewalk.
Yeah.
Puzzles me. I really appreciate the new sidewalk on Ellis. Wife and I walk our grandchildren all the time, and there are roads we don't like to be on because of the traffic, and this one really helped a lot. The new sidewalk along the front of, by Garrett. That, Westerbrook Academy, whatever it is, no, the little Goddard, thank you. And that sidewalk has been extended just now to the next road down. It's
Mhm.
great, so I don't see why we wouldn't encourage sidewalks for residential. See why the hesitation. Anyway, just a comment on that. Curb cuts, another thought. And I like your idea of minimizing curb cuts. One place I thought was pretty good was go into the CVS parking lot. You can use the same driveway as the Hill Cadillac or something. I mean, west. One less curb cut there needed. Comment on less curb cuts.
Who knows in CVS share that?
Yeah. Well, they shared a light, but there's another one before, it, right next to the Cadillac dealer.
The CVS, no, already Rite Aid parking lot.
Mhm.
One point in time, and you mentioned this sort of is I thought they were trying to let a car dealership pay to use that lot to park. The cars in, just leave them there all the time. It was denied, and I thought that was because the lot was built there in order for customers. So-
My understanding is, yes, it was that, I think the lot was, part of the lot's requirement is that it's open for people to park there, but it is not a public parking lot. It is owned by, like, it is not tied to the number of spaces that Rite Aid needed. That was my point.
I didn't know that. That's what but like I said, when it was denied, I thought that was the issue, was because it's supposed to be there. All right. You mentioned reducing minimum parking spots for businesses.
No, again, I didn't say that. I said we're eliminating the requirement to have minimum parking, not reducing the parking. So allowing it to be up to the developer or the builder, or the home, not the homeowner, but the business to decide how many parking spaces they need. But I'm not saying, let me phrase it a different way.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
phrase that in different.
So right now, if you build an office building, right? You need, I think it's 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Okay? I'm not saying to make it more or less than that per 1,000 square feet. I'm saying to make it so that the company building the office decides, we have 20 employees and we typically have 1 to 2 visitors per day. We're not a very, public oriented company. We need about, 25 spaces to be comfortable. We'll put in 25 spaces regardless of our square footage. It would be up to the builder, the developer. I guess my point is I'd like to see an elimination of a minimum, not say you must have X parking spaces. We'll leave it up to you to say, I need this many, because right now there's a minimum. There's no maximum. You can build, again, there's a limit to what your lot, could fit, but
How does that work then if the user changes? Goes from a dentist who has 3 people a day to 20 people a day to a much more busy. How does that work?
so if I'm, let's say I'm a retail, let's say this office has been, it's vacant, I'm a retail business owner looking to put my business there. Part of my business analysis is where, look at how are people gonna get there? How many parking spaces do I need? That's part of that's my responsibility as a business owner to figure out if this space even makes sense for me. We're not trying to overregulate.
Yeah, all he's talking about is removing a regulation that is kind of arbitrary based on size of property or size of development, but not actually people. And that is something that comes up in a lot of communities because the vision of how many people are using the space is so variable these days, especially with remote working and all that other kind of stuff. I mean, stuff changes so often, and then you just end up with these vast parking lots and you're just looking at like blank spaces half the time.
I understand the thought, but I don't understand how that changes if the use of the building changes to something much more dense as far as number of parking spaces needed. Is
So if
that?
you went from like
if
a
I- if
warehouse
I'm-
to a retail store, like,
What?
so if you had a building move from a warehouse to a retail store, more people would be coming to that, and then you'd need more parking spots, but the building already exists, the parking lot already exists. what would be the requirement for the new business to put in more
The
spots
new
to
business
accommodate?
should determine on their own if the parking of the building they're buying makes
Exactly.
sense for them.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is if you go to where the explanation he provided, which is on Cricket Avenue, coming off of Lancaster Avenue, if you look where
In
that
in
was.
Ardmore, in Ardmore.
I'm sorry, yeah. What you would look at is there was a lot of problems along those roads where people were parking on those roads. They didn't have anywhere else to park. Okay, whoever decided to develop that area, which they've developed it considerably. It used to be Milk Boy Cafe used to be there. There's a lot of different things in there. And they removed space that otherwise can now be utilized for other things, including housing, parking, and, you know, whatever else they're gonna use it for. And now that you explained it, that makes a lot more sense to me. It just permits the ability to create designs that are sort of outside of the old surface structure of, you know, the building has an occupancy of 100 people, so therefore we have to have 100 spaces. And I get it. I play devil's advocate for a reason, but
Mhm.
I think what it is it's not prohibitive.
Right.
What it does is it provides an ancillary way of doing something.
I'm not seeing catch that if the business changes to a much more use, where does the township have?
I mean, we can build that into the zoning. So I think that you can build into the zoning that that any change in use would be required to do a traffic or a parking study,
Wonderful.
whatever you wanted to do, you can build that in.
I didn't hear
to
that. from him,
address
so I
that.
wanted to hear that from someone.
Yeah, that
Cover
was,
that base.
I know you don't have access to the document, but that actually
Excellent.
is written in,
Okay.
in.
I
the-
just
that
didn't happen to hear it.
description.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
No, but if you get an opportunity, so if you go online, in the agenda, there is a hyperlink that you can actually see the full recommended document, I believe, right?
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it was. So if you could actually check on the language, he was just saying that it is baked in there, but it's a lot. We would never be able to cover it in the whole meetings. That's why we sent it to the group, to be able to read and prepare for the meeting, but you can have access to it.
Okay. thanks.
Yeah, both for items 1 and 5, which talk about parking. One talks about determining the spaces that you need for your business, and then that goes to the township to approve. Okay, you said, we need 20 spaces based on this. The township looks at it, says, yeah, that makes sense. Or, no, we don't agree. Let's negotiate. And then the number 5, we needed for the bigger commercial developments, we're asking for the developer's traffic professional to prepare a formal study.
If a building has a retail function, changes to something else, slightly different, but still within zoning, the township have a requirement that use come to the zoning people to say, okay, we're gonna change it for.
I mean, anytime a building changes its use, then it depends on obviously what it is. We review any plan for, does it change store capacity? Does it change,
Right.
what does it change? And that change in use
Occupancy for the
may
spot.
drive what they need to do.
Okay, so if somebody changes the use, they have to come.
I think that we would make sure the code was written in such a way that we controlled that.
One more, that's all. You mentioned potentially reducing the number setback
Yes.
and also reducing the number of parking places may be required. Does that mean now that the building footprint can be much bigger?
Potentially.
Do we want that density?
In certain parts of town, that's the proposal. That's what so from our perspective of encouraging walkability, then it's hard to have walkability without density. So if you have buildings and islands of parking spread out over a mile, no one's gonna walk there. If you have a dense little core of town, that buildings are next, like shops and restaurants are next to each other, then it's very convenient for people to walk around, and people will do that. So we're not proposing these zoning changes throughout the entire town. They are mostly limited to the C1 district, which is the very core of town, Westchester Pike, 52.
The idea is that most of us and most of the people we meet with are concerned about density spreading out where you have big centers going in all of the remaining undeveloped spots or redeveloping areas. And this is one of the ways we're trying to propose a change is concentrating it where it should be, which is in the commercial district.
We'd rather
where
see
you can-
small investments in the commercial
Yep.
district that exists now, rather than construction of new shopping centers on the periphery of town.
Mm.
That's what
And-
that's what our angle is.
And just so, just so you know, this committee would make a recommendation to the board. The board would then
Yeah.
say, we think that this is something that ought to be considered. It would then be reviewed by staff. It would probably be reviewed by our engineer, because we would have to implement whatever it was. We need to know how it's done. It would go back before the planning commission for review through a public process there. It would then go back before the board for a full public process there. So this is, you know, even if this committee puts something in that, you know, that the rest of the township would totally agree with, it's gonna go through a lot of steps to get to that.
Very proposed, but I'm
and-
just trying to understand a little. bit.
Yeah.
It's
So
important to know that we
so
don't have
I
an
don't,
authority.
I don't know that everything's been fleshed, like, I don't think
No
it's all full
authority.
fleshed out yet. I think that these are proposals, the ideas are where we have, and that it would take the steps going forward.
And this is an important part of that process, is to
Got to start somewhere.
have discussions and figure out what makes sense, what doesn't, what are the details, and that's why we need feedback like yours to refine these ideas.
All right, thank you. I just also wanted to say, I can provide help to you guys if you ever need help for any kind of trails type work. I did one question. How do we get connected from the Meadows to Goshen Trail? I think you guys talked about that.
Good question.
Talked to you about this before.
Yeah.
Ago. I don't know if that meeting's ever gotten anywhere, but
So right now there is the trail that goes along 252 through the Lister property.
that's where we walk all the way down and then all the way down to the
Yeah.
sign that opens up into the Goshen Trail.
There's
and the
nothing on
Meadows.
the other
We'd
end of
like to
Goshen
go-
Trail yet.
I had to go through the Meadows and then connect to Echo Valley somehow, or connect across to Goshen and make it a loop. I don't like back and forth. I like to go in a big loop then.
We feel the same way.
Yeah,
So,
So on the drawing board.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it is a proposed trail.
Have
If you
have
look at
seen-
the township's, like, was it open space and greenways plan?
Yeah.
That connection is one of the proposed connections, but implementation is, we're not there yet.
When you walk down Goshen Trail, that Lister seems to end and there's a chunk of woods between.
But just so you know, that's their open space, and the township can't arbitrarily go in and say,
Not arbitrarily.
you
but I'm
know,
just saying, is that a possibility?
I mean, it is, but right now, we've had conversations with them, and they're not interested in going forward.
There's a HOA huge hurdle that we have not figured out a way to get around that we discussed in our previous meeting.
Right.
I think they have like a minimum 2/3 vote, and it's not just 2/3, it's 2/3 of the entire community, and they can't get enough people on a normal day or any other. So what it is, it's a built-in contractual language that purposely discourages changes to their charter.
So people would likely be in favor, except that they can't.
That's
get
my
it.
opinion about it. Not a statement.
Sorry, what'd you say, John?
And we tried providing some benefit for them to get them,
I don't know about we.
well, we generically.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what the overall benefit would be other than them being more connected to the
Yeah.
community other than the front.
Yeah,
But
I mean, if the problem is just getting them around, getting the vote around to everybody, they should be changing their bylaws. Because it's got to affect them in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, but they're not the only one. It's an HOA thing, is my understanding across the board. But if you go on the township website, you type in what he said, open space network plan.
I don't want to cut you guys off. I just want to let you know that you have about 15 minutes
Okay.
before your meeting's going to end, because I've got another meeting that starts at 7.
But anyways,
you for
that's
the
a good
time.
spot to see the trail map. Thank
Didn't
you.
See if there was any more on the agenda or not, so, but I want to.
And thank you for
Thank
your
you.
questions and
Yeah.
comments and willingness to help out the group. Hopefully, do you come on the trail walks? Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's appreciated. Okay, so let's move on to old business. Do we have any updates on the official town map?
Leave the official town map's been attached to your agenda so you can take a look at it. Hope you've had a chance to do that. We are going to, it wasn't on your list, and so I'm going to add one property that the township has since added. We have at the end of the year, the township received the John Westhouse property. So we're going, which is at the corner of Goshen Road and 252, what would be the southwest corner. And so we're going to add that before it goes before planning. But the goal is to put it before planning, hopefully this month, let them start taking a look at it, and then moving it through the process.
That's great. The updates.
I think we got all the ones that you had. We added a couple others that you may not have known about, and so
I saw, yeah.
Is there a larger map that we can look at? I can't really see what's on here because it's too.
we can send it to you electronically where you can blow it up. We don't have it printed out larger.
Okay.
And the parcel numbers, I think, are on the right. So if you pull that, like in your conference room, if you pull that on that big screen in your conference room, then you could probably toggle pretty quickly to the actual parcel numbers.
Mhm.
It is tough. I hate looking at the Delaware County
Yeah, it's hard.
website. It's so difficult to navigate.
Okay, any updates on the Meadow Preserve parking lot?
There's nothing, no changes from the last month. We're waiting for the weather to get better. Weather is getting better. I'm thinking that our team will probably go ahead and order the stuff and get it in hand, and then we can start putting it in.
Okay. So 8.3, monthly review and possible actions on the Greenway and Open Space Network. I know this is usually your thing. You got anything else?
No, I mean, so, Will, was it? Right, so, Evan had mentioned that implementation is one of the tough parts about some of these things. So I keep this on the back end of every agenda for the old business. And it's really just supposed to be like our homing beacons. And these are the major steps of trails that we have to go through. And I kind of show like, we're ongoing in this, we're just beginning here, whatever, we need more here. But the hardest part is this kind of implementation phase where you actually have to find ways with either through legal process or through engagement of the public to actually get the ability to build the trails, because we've got good plans. And but it's difficult because then even after you get the agreements, then you need the funding. So there's like this kind of step process. So I always keep that on there just so that whenever anybody sees this agenda, whether it's our committee or the public, they always remember like it is a big process and it's a big apple to take a bite of, but we are actively going after these, and this is where we are in the process. And then the hope is that over time, those little italicized parts next to it kind of get changed. But yeah, no, that's it. Thank you, Beth.
Okay, number 9 is board comment. Anything you guys want to see on the agenda for next month? I think maybe adding the residential stuff for the ordinance map or ordinance suggestions may be a thing. Do you have anything else, Anthony?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
we can add that. We can, I think just continue the discussion on the zoning stuff. I don't think we're ready to make to send anything yet. I think keep that on the agenda for discussion next
Okay.
month, and we can refine it further. I looked into some of the grants that are available. There is a Trails and Greenways grant that has a deadline of May 31st. 250K maximum award, 15% match. Anything related to improving trails and greenways as we understand them. I read the details on the grant. Is that something we should make an effort to try to?
Is that from the state?
Yes, it's that is a Department of I forget the C stands for. It's the DCED, something in Community and Economic Development. Maybe I
Yeah.
forget. I might have butchered
Is
it.
that still viable though?
Yes, yes.
As
That-
as
that
of this
deadline-
week?
That deadline is not March, May 31st.
I mean, there's been a lot of cuts. I didn't know if it was still viable. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I checked, it's open. As far as the website's concerned, it's
It's still there.
yeah,
Because
Yeah.
I think that's coming from a state agency, correct?
yeah.
Yeah. So-
It could be state funding.
For the application. Plug in and try to apply.
Oh,
Oh, it is PA, yeah.
so I can't remember last we talked about it, but, the township at one point was gonna have a grant personnel, then it was a consultant. Where's the township's position of this? Because quite frankly, we've had conversations where we were curious, like, even if we do a horrible job, like, let's just take a stab at our committee,
Yeah.
writing a
learn
grant
something.
application and just go for it. And if we learn, yeah, I mean, seriously, I mean,
Actually, I don't think grant writing is all that difficult. It's
I don't think, I was the
I,
requirement.
I was trying
It's
to.
not.
I think the harder part is finding out what grants we need to go for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is let's, like, one of the things that we tried to do, we tried to get it, and here's where it becomes a challenge. Like, we wanted to do the trail down in front of, all along Campus Boulevard, down and through the park, back out to Route 3, then back down here where we did the sidewalk on Ellis Avenue, and we tried to do that. And so we put in for 3 grants to do that. We got one of the 3, and instead of we asked for $1 million, I think we got 600,000 out of that one grant. So now we had to redo our whole plan based on that. And so that's the biggest key, is like, if we don't get the funding, are we prepared as the township, like, a lot of times I try to match grants with other grants, and sometimes you can do that and sometimes you can't. Sometimes a state grant, you can match against a federal grant, but you can't match 2 state grants together. Or sometimes you can match, a local, like a county grant and another county grant, and that's okay. You have to know how the funding works and what you can do. And so that's probably the bigger challenge. Writing the grant itself is not always the hard part if you're good at telling the story. One of the things that we're trying to do is build a base of just, this is us, who we are. And so that because they always ask that question, who's the township? What are you about? And so that becomes the same for every grant.
Right.
And all we have to do is do a plug and play in that one. Really, where you're looking at the difference is, like, when it's a
The
trail
project
grant,
details.
what is the piece? Why are trails important? And it goes back to our Trails and Greenways study. And then the second piece of that is specifically what you're after. And so if you have a project, you said it was 250,000.
This grant is a
Yeah.
max of 250.
So let's take the max of the 250. If there's a place where you would like to see us try to get that, then, that's what I would recommend. is
Meaning
let's
where
go
to
ahead.
spend it,
Huh?
meaning how to spend it.
How to spend it, like where do you want to apply the
Be a
250?
small enough project that would cover.
To give you an idea, just so you know, the Ellis Avenue sidewalk project cost us about 350,000.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea what that.
So that's gonna segue into something I want to bring up that I think should be something on our radar. It's not necessarily a trail. But anybody that's been in this area for a long time knows on 252 between, I would say Gentili's down to, I forget what the name of the restaurant. It used to be
Tekka.
Tekka.
Okay, yeah.
I've seen a lot of people that are getting off the bus that are walking to work,
Yeah,
and it terrifies me they're gonna get crushed.
Oh, yeah,
We've talked
That
about it here
and
this week.
kids.
barely any room.
I know a lot of kids that are my kids' friends who walk up to, the commercial area, and they're walking that same, and they have no other route.
Yeah.
But other than sit on the shoulder.
so I will tell you, we put in for a TIP, which is traffic improvement plan monies, that we put into, with PennDOT, probably 5 years before I came, for what's known as the Bryn Mawr extension. And so that was to take Bryn Mawr Avenue out to, be connected to True Farm, basically. And you would go on Cornerstone, and it would go back, it would go about the back, on the backside of Dunwoody, and go out to Bryn Mawr Avenue. We looked at that and we said, what would be ideal there would be to actually put in bike and trail. That's what's really needed. That's the biggest win that we could get, because a lot of people didn't want to put the traffic back along that area. But that we have tip dollars. Actually, I have a meeting tomorrow to discuss this further, the next steps. So there are tip monies to put in, extend the bike lanes that are on Troop Farm, up along Cornerstone. Make sure all the sidewalks are in good shape. Take that and then go back along the backside or the far side of Dunwoody back out to Bryn Mawr Avenue. So it would allow people for exactly that purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just doing it just.
There's not a lot of room to do it on 252. We looked at trying to do it down 252 because that's the path of least resistance. People are already there. I can't imagine anybody choosing to walk along that area. It's very dangerous. We do not encourage it. We don't think that's wise. Even if we were able to put in a sidewalk, we didn't see a way to do it safely. And so
You'd have
that's
to
the
go-
reason why we're
you'd have
going
to
the
go
other
up.
side.
Yeah.
It would have to be. And there's a big drop off. There's a lot of challenges. So that's the reason why we're looking at what we're doing. So just so you know, that's something that we're working. It's not really ready to go fully public yet. Once it is, we'll get it out to the public and do that. But we are actually working towards getting it fully designed. The concept is there. Now we're getting it fully designed.
Is there any, oh, never mind. Well, all right, so we're gonna, the DCED grant seminar is March 12th that Terry just sent us all. 9:30 a.m. at the Rose Tree Fire Company. What day of the week is that? Of course, the Wednesday. It's next Wednesday or something, 9:30 in the morning. So there's a DCED grant seminar specific for like this, basically. Figuring out the requirements. It's 9:30 at the Rose Tree Fire Company. 9:30 next Wednesday. So it says 9:30 to 11:30. So that would be technically something where for this specific grant, you would get great information. And then the question is just, how would we spend it? What are the other opportunities that we already have? I cannot. I'm in Jersey that day. Yeah, I know.
Let's find out if it's a required meeting.
It's not.
Sometimes they are. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, really?
Let's find out if it's a required meeting. If it is a required meeting, I'll see if I can send somebody from the staff.
Okay, I know we are running really short on time. John went to the Trail Summit and he wanted to give a quick summary and
Yeah.
I'm trying to get us out of here by 6:55, so give you just a few minutes here to do that.
I talk faster than I ever have in my
Yeah.
life. Okay, yeah, I did go to the summit, as usual. This was February 8th. It was wonderful. I mean, you go into there, and you come out all enthused, hear all the things that we're gonna do. And it did not disappoint. A good introductory remarks by Elaine Schaefer. There was a nice presentation by our own Kathy Spar, talking about the Delaware County new transportation. And anybody interested should certainly look that up because, you know, she's really great in maps and she had everything laid out. It was perfect. She's a good speaker. Now, also Marple Township came in and they talked about trails and there's not much available, but they have made a decision to go small, do little addition. And I'm just wondering if that might actually be applicable to Newtown. If we're, you know, having problems on some of the main projects, do little stuff so that we have something to show. And maybe it's something that should be looked at. While I was there, I talked to Annie Thorne, who's head of the Trails Committee in Edgemont, but she's also a township supervisor. And she said, I've got these new parcels. I'm real interested. I knew exactly what she was talking about because I was interested. These are two natural lands, 40-acre parcels. And they could be accessed with our road or trail going through the Deepaton property. And it could go across the creek and then up to there, and I would suggest that some of us get together and talk with Annie and see what she has in mind and how we can. That's it.
Thank you.
Yes, no?
Okay, any other comments? Anything else we want to add to the agenda for next month?
So I just want to review the notes real quick to make sure that I have the important stuff captured, but. Stuck. Yeah, so we're gonna put the zoning recommendations refinement. That's gonna probably stay on for probably a couple months, honestly, as we keep. Yep, and then the grants, if we can find a way about the meeting, if it's mandatory, if not, but we can look at that. And if it's due May 31st, maybe by next meeting, we can all do our homework, come back and kind of keep that on the meetings. An item of like how we would go after, what we're gonna spend the money on. And that's really all I have for throwing on to the next meeting. I think we're good.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
and any additional public comment? Awesome. Okay, anyone motion to adjourn?
So moved.
John, motion, second by Evan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, let's get out of here. Motion, we're adjourned.